Right.
I welcome you all for this VMA special session. I also like to welcome members from other 10 Central India's prominent association who joined hand with us for this public event. Very few companies in the world get the privilege to be associated with the product name. So as soon as you talked about the product, you know the company name. And one of such product is Bhakarwadi. Whenever we say Bhakarwadi, the word Chitaye comes in our mind. We are very privileged to have Indranil Chitaye, partner of Chitaye Bandhu Group, joining us for this special public event in conversation with. Let's see some brief points about Indranil's life. Indranil Chitaye is a fourth generation partner, this 80-year Chitaye Group company. He studied engineering from VIT. He joined the family business full-time from the year 2011. Indranil is pursuing his MBA from Harvard Business School. Over the year, Indranil has handled multiple roles in Chitaya Group that includes manufacturing, operations, supply chain, data management, and MIS. Indranil now focus on strategy and operation domains. His key projects include the company's new 2 lakh square feet acquired factory that started their foray into mithai and namkeen packaging and distribution business. Since 2017, they have been able to triple their volumes. He also has spent a lot of time automizing the traditional processes like burfis, ladus, kaju katli, bhakarwadi, chiuda, and namkeens. While leveraging their growth, their products now reach to couple of lakh stores all across the world, 7 continents also. Indranil has worked on getting the data management and then further using artificial intelligence and machine learning to get last mile visibility. Indranil's current focus lies on making India food healthier, creating alternatives for diabetes, allergen foods, lifestyle enhancing products, and creating Chitaya as a total lifestyle food company. Part of this initiative in him confounding Herbia. Herbia is engaging into making Ayurveda accessible and now sell their range of herbal infusion and diversifying soon into other activities of Ayurveda product. Indranil is also a very vibrant personality. He's an avid music lover and plays the synthesizer, tabla, and has been learning drums from last 3 years. He's also an active biker, has some various camps, sessions, and tours off the road. Indranil also began his angel investor company in 2018 and is invested and on board tech startup focusing on HR Niti, Women Creek Zone, and genetics and Shoptimize. The list goes on, but I think we should hear from his own. Indranil, we welcome you on behalf of VMA to the Central India's platform. Good morning.
Good morning, Prashant. Thank you very much. I must thank VMA for hosting me today morning.
It's a privilege to us that you give us the time from your busy schedule on Sunday morning to be live with so many people. When you joined, I think it was 4th generation you joined. So it was a 3-generation legacy you had. So how difficult it was for you to incorporate your modern techniques and still keeping the tradition alive in the Chitaya Group?
I would say that way, as a family, we have always been relatively progressive when it comes to adopting technology. So, back in the 70s, we were the first company in the country to actually start milk in pouches. Ever since then, Chitaya Group as a company has always been forward thinking in adopting technology. So I would say that way, breaking that ice was easy. Where the issue came was particularly in standardizing Indian products. So while our dairy background or our namkeen background, relatively there is a standardized measure across the world, nobody really was seeing how to package mithai. Because mithai till then was particularly about making it fresh, packaging it across the counter in the stores, and then consuming it live. So nobody was seeing how they could package it and actually preserve it for say 6 months, 3 months, year, depending upon what process we are putting into. And while establishing that, we had to change the way the product was being made as well. And that is where, I think we deliberated a lot, we debated a lot, and we had to make sure that we retain the originality of the product while automating it.
Always the question comes with any mithai wala or any namkeen wala, whomever we spoke with in last 40 years or so, they always say this is a human skill set. And we know now Chitaya is almost optimized most of their production process and automated. I think you are now making, what I heard correctly is around 1,000 kilo of bhakarwadi every hour. And how did you achieve that? Means this is something which is remarkable for all mithai walas.
I think a lot of that depends on the standardization. Whenever we say that it is a human scale, there is a inherent knowledge that somehow we do not put onto the paper. So whenever that is put onto the paper, the process is standardized, the standard operating procedure is defined, and you know what parameters you need to control to achieve the same output each and every time. it can be achieved very well. Of course, it's not overnight. And, Bakarwadi automation itself, when my father was doing it, took about 7-8 years. And we had to do that step by step. And I think now we have a good enough team internally as well, and also that knowledge of how to translate that human activity into process. And with that standardized process, how we can automate. So when you standardize, I think things can be relatively easier to automate.
Great. This is correct, or is a myth? I don't know that. We heard that the German machinists are making laddus for us, and the Japanese companies making modak for us now.
That is true. So even the Kaju Katli is now being made on completely automated German machines. Similarly, the ladus, which are all being made on machines which are built there. And the modaks are happening on machines either in Japan or from Brazil. It depends on the type of machine we are using.
So that's where the smart innovation and the integration of the product diversified range came into picture. So that
right.
brings naturally to one very important question which comes in, let's say, mithais and farsan, is the quality control. So how did you manage that the quality control of the machines manufacturing versus the human skill set goes very smoothly?
So I would say that, if the machine is able to do what it is designed to do properly, and if you put that much time in designing the machines properly, the output variability will reduce substantially. The main concern is that, the machine, unlike the human mind, does not have an intelligence of its own. It's only now that they have started to learn on their own. But that is where the standardization and controls on the input side are very essential. So if you are expecting the machine to produce the same bakarwadi at 8 a.m. in the morning and 10 p.m. in the evening, you need to standardize the raw material that is going inside, the process that is going inside. So that way we go to the extent where, thanks to our dairy backward integration, the khoa that is being used to make mithai is in our factories. The gulab jam that we make, the gulab jam mix happens in our own factories. That way the mango pulp also is something that we standardize in the mango burfi, so that, or the mango srikhand, so that there is less variation in the flavor. Same goes even to the extent where we do contract farming for our chili or coriander, where we grow the same breed of green chili or coriander throughout the year with the help of farmers, so that we don't have any flavor variation as well and profile variation. So this helps us standardize the recipe, and if that is standardized well, the machine does its job properly.
To the mind of branding and packaging, I think Chitaya Group became one of the pioneer in, like you already mentioned, in packaging and branding your product. So how did you, what you see in branding and packaging industry collaborating with food industry to get this shelf life increase, or let's say visibility increase, or even the product quality management?
Of course, the product quality management is on the internal, but that plays an important role in ensuring the customer comes back to you. But the packaging and the branding are the more cosmetic aspects of the business, and that also is something that needs a lot of attention. For the simple reason that, when we are putting these products on different shelves in multi-brand outlets, so be it the kirana stores, be it supermarkets, or be it in the export channel, where our own sales people are not there to convince the people to buy the brand. Your branding and packaging and how you visualize your product plays an important role in people making the decision to buy it. So how do you communicate all of this is something that is essential for the customer to make the first buy. After making the buy, if your product is good, your product has merit, the customer will come and buy it again. And whenever he buys it again, that is where your quality control parameters play an important role. That if they are up to the mark, each and every time the customer buys it, he gets the same experience, he or she. And if that same experience is consistent, then you have a repeated revenue coming in from the customer, and that is when companies actually start prospering.
It's a very good point. That brings to me another question which we all Indians love, is like exporting. We know Chitaya Group is now present all 7 continents on the world. You export a lot. When you are exporting, what are the parameters actually you focus? Because you are an Indian snack and mithai manufacturing company who are exporting all 7 continents. Do you have to change or anything to do that, or what's the parameter you actually optimize for it?
So there are a couple of changes we need to factor in. One is, of course, the regulations of the countries that the product is going into. So, for example, America or Europe does not allow any dairy-based product going in from India. So that's why we probably cannot send a certain range of our products, but any products which we have dairy alternatives, we are able to send those. Similarly, countries like Australia have a limitation as to the dairy percentage. So we have to change our recipes to suit that. But while doing that, the customer there should not feel a difference between what they are eating there and what they would get here. And how to balance that is where the R&D and the legal team play an important role. So you need to build those teams and have those right resources also, so that you can actually export everywhere in the world. So it's a hands-on process. And you need to be on top of the things all the time, because regulations keep changing globally and we have to be compliant with them all the time.
That's great. But there must have been some rejection happening. So how do you handle rejection then?
So there have been a couple of times where probably we have got feedback that something has not worked properly, or the regulations have changed so that we need to modify. Fortunately, we have not yet been to the place where something has been rejected fully, because of our strong ideology on how to be compliant. So, of course, beyond this, if something goes wrong and something is to be recalled, we need to have the systems to recall the product back from the market as well. And that is where, again, the system dependence plays an important role, because that's part of the global food safety standards measure, that if something is not right, something is rejected, recalled, we need to be able to get the product back out of the shelves as soon as possible. And how can we have that reverse traceability is something that is essential in good organizations.
Of course, this is very key factor, that the handling of the rejection for any business is very important. But the second key factor when you go across the globe or even pan India is the competition. So how do you handle that part? Means when your competitors are also launching the similar kind of products.
I think competition is necessary. It is healthy as well. And also something that it keeps you on your toes and helps you innovate. So I am somebody who likes that competition. I am somebody who enjoys to see what the competition is doing. And that way, how can we stay ahead of the curve is something that we have to bring in as a culture, as an organization. And if you have a leadership team that is able to handle this, digest this, then competition constructively helps the organization grow.
We heard that you use lot of data analysis for customer feedback, or let's say customer satisfaction level. So can you elaborate please on that?
Sure. So, as I was speaking about the whole traceability of the chain, we start at the farm and we end with the fork. So when we are at the fork, which is say something that the consumer is going to eat the product, we need to know whether the consumer likes the product or does not like the product. And very often in the general trade market, the consumer is not the direct end user, but rather the retailer. So we need to know what our retailers are buying, how frequently they are buying, what is the replenishment cycle of and the range that they are buying. And with all of this backward integrated, how can we streamline our availability at our distributors and super stockists? And consequently, how can we produce products which are very close to the freshness, so that people will still get products which are relatively very fresh? And if all of this data is something that we are able to bring back into the funnel, that is where the smart manufacturing process actually starts happening. And being in the perishable business, where every food has a shelf life, we need to ensure that our wastages are controlled and we do not let anything remain on the shelf which is beyond its shelf life. So that's why this pull-based mechanism is something that we are able to enable because of the data analytics that are in place. So that's how we try to use data. And now with historical data coming into it, we have been able to put in our own machine learning algorithms onto it. And it has its own intelligence now, where it can predict what we need to do every month to a certain extent with great accuracy, where so that, even the human dependency on predicting and taking position is reduced further.
This, I think, mithai, whenever we say about mithai, and especially I studied in Pune, so I know whenever we talk about any festival or any naivedya given to any god, chitare, it comes first thing in the mind. But Indian calendar doesn't work that way. We have the English calendar where the salaries structure is fixed on days and the month of. But our festivals are not fixed. They are very flexible. They are following the Hindu calendar. So does the buying pattern of the human nature changes. So how do you manage that? Because inventory management with Hindu calendar and the English calendar management, how do you tackle that major issue?
So I would say that is where the experience also plays an important role. But along with the experience, now the data availability also helps us streamline this better. So as you rightly mentioned, our Indian festival buying is completely dependent on the Hindu calendar. Just recently we had Gudi Padwa. Gudi Padwa can be at the end of March or it can be in the first week of April also. The end of month buying is always a lot more conservative than the first 2 weeks of month buying. So that way, because the salaries have happened just recently. So that way, we also need to fine tune our product availability and production planning. So in anticipation for this kind of surge. Of course, this was something that we used to do historically with time-tested, proven methods. But now, data availability and the systems that we have built are able to predict this for us, probably with better accuracy than human mind.
This brings to another very curious question, which we saw, all Indians saw throughout their childhood or their mom and pop shops near them, or mithai and namkins. It is a very unorganized sector. There is not much organization done in it, whether it's terms of procurement or whether it terms of the distribution. Chitae Group comes across 80-year-old company which has a very organized structure of this unorganized market. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, I think there is always scope for improvement. So we need to, as entrepreneurs or leaders of any organization, we need to take a call that there will always be players who are unorganized, less organized, or organized and probably early adopters. So as a philosophy of 80 years, we have probably been early adopters. So we have always emphasized on being that system-driven and organized in terms of our approach towards work. So it depends on the entrepreneurs. I am sure there are many people who thrive being disorganized as well. So there is no one such pill that can solve this issue, but it's about that organization philosophy, I would say. Prashant, could you come again? I lost your voice.
The franchise. Do you follow the franchise area-wise, or you say like like mentality people should join to get the franchise?
Could you please repeat the question? I lost you for the first part of the question.
We know Chitae Group has a lot of franchise network. You always thrive on the franchise network. So when you decide the franchise giving, how you decide based on a location, or you decide that the like-minded people should join you?
It is a mix of both. I would say there is a weightage pattern given to multiple parameters. One is, of course, the location. You can have good people, but bad location, then that franchisee can fail. Similarly, good location with bad people, and also the franchisee can fail. So what we need to see is that, the longevity of the people involved. How long can they be involved in this business? How eager are they to run this business? And along with that, are they in a good location? Along with that, the financial metrics are something that we also need to understand, that sometimes certain expenses are much higher in certain high streets. So if you are to do a store in Dadar or Vile Parle, these are prime areas for business. So the cost of rental itself is very high. So how does this impact the business, and how much business do we need to do to break even is something that we need to put. And then if the entrepreneur is somebody that we see can bring all of these activities together, we take a bet on that. So ultimately, with businesses, it's that all variables can be right, but still something can go wrong. So you have to take a placement and let things play out, and over time you understand whether it is right or wrong.
Yes, very rightly said. Experience teach everyone. When we talk about Chitae, it's always comes the milk as the first product. We always associate Chitae as a milk product company. Can you share us a little bit what was the ideology from moving from a Chitae milk product to now Chitae synonymous to Bhakarwadi, or maybe a future products you guys are developing?
I would say we are still a milk company because either we sell liquid milk or we sell a lot of products which have milk. So namkeens and bakarwadi, while they bring the identity for us, on the division of turnover, it's still relatively a smaller percentage compared to what would be coming in from milk and milk products. But the concern is that, with milk, there are limitations to the global market because of the embargoes that many other countries try to impose on our country. Along with that, the shelf life is something that is, just about starting to get explored, and we have products which are sustaining a little longer. Along with that, the policy on just milk products in our country has also not been very clear. So that's why we need to de-risk our dependency on just one line of business. And that is where the namkeens and the other product range also helps us grow. And very often, because of their robustness, we get entry into other markets with those. And then we are able to, once the supply chain stabilizes, we can bring our dairy products, which is our core expertise, into that line as well.
It's a nice way of marketing the product, but that also brings to another very important question, because it's all related to taste. There is a changing taste of the modern generation from, let's say, our grandparents to parents to now and the future generation. How Chitaiya Group is managing that change of the taste buds, because we are getting bombarded with all the Western products and the Western taste buds.
Very true. So I would say that's why our competition is no more just any big dairy brand or any big namkeen brand. Even the bakeries and the chocolate manufacturers and the donut players are all our competitors. And we basically get into the dessert or celebration food category. And how can we also be more westernized is something we try to do. So, for example, products like, say, blueberry son papdi or cranberry son papdi are something we never imagined 10 years ago, but they are now doing great volumes in the son papdi category for us. And that is where the younger audience is also able to eat those products, because they associate the flavor profile well, yet they want the traditionalness of the products. So, it's a transition period that Chitaiya Group is also in. And eventually, we will also be having more diversified range of products that appeal to a wider category.
Great, but that also brings to another typical question. Whenever we talk about Chitaiya Group, it's also always associated with Marathi audience, or let's say Marathi taste buds. So are you trying something new to break that, let's say, stereotype, and trying to attract non-Marathi people by doing some new products which are non-Marathi?
So I would say we still want to retain our Maharashtrian identity after our Maharashtra has given us what we are today. So while we will, of course, make products which are appealing beyond the Maharashtrian audience, and of course, we are also distributing in multiple states now across the country and globally too. We will have products which appeal to a wider audience, but then we will also continue to retain our identity as a Maharashtrian product manufacturer, because that itself is a wide array of products that we have. So why should we let that go is a question that we have to address.
No, that's true. That's true. I was just saying that, are you planning to, let's say nowadays people are going towards the munching kind of things, where the packaging is changed to small packets or something like that, just to attract the on-the-go product kind of range.
Of course. So on the go and convenience food is something that will be necessary in the time to come, especially with the way the changing family situations, changing lifestyle situations, and changing stress levels are forcing our people to be in. So the consumption patterns are going to change, and we have to adapt to that.
Chitaiya Group is always known for their innovative product, but there is another very innovative things I think you guys have started, which is called the marketing. Everybody goes for this 10 seconds ad, but now you guys are going with these storytelling ads, which is really touching to the hearts of, at least I know Marathi, so all Marathi audience as well as non-Marathi people also. So what's the idea behind it?
So to be very honest, when we started doing this, it say maybe 78, 80 years of no advertising. And then suddenly if we start doing heavy product advertising, it does not really match with the brand identity or the flavor that we as owners also bring into the business. So while our retail environment has changed and now we compete in multiple retail environments against in a multi-brand environment, we need to showcase what the brand stands for rather than the products, because the customers are aware about the product. What we want to try and focus is that what does the brand stand for? What are the values the brand tries to preserve? What is the tradition and the ethics that the brand wishes to understand and appreciate in its customers? And what are these everyday instances where the brand can be a part of their life? And that is where this storytelling plays an important role, because we connect to them beyond the product association, because the product preferences and the priorities can change. The brand values will remain constant.
Yeah, it's very nice. Means I really enjoy the advertisement you guys post on YouTube. I think they are best storytelling. It's almost like a watching movie in a couple of minutes.
Thank you.
That gives you quite a good digital platform presence. But that also brings to another biggest problem which we are seeing in last couple of years is called online shopping. Chite, always shopping experience was offline. Seeing is what believing. So now this all online shopping, how do you see this online shopping is affecting, or you think it's a boom or adding to your products?
It is a must-have revenue stream for every organization now. You cannot simply rely on hardcore hard asset channels for sales. And especially in times like this, where many of us have been locked down, people want their products from the comfort of their sofa or their office chair. So we need to be present where the customer wants us to be, rather than governing the customer to come and buy from our preferences. So online is a mandatory avenue for every brand to be present in. I do not see why they should not be. But while doing that, what I also see is that servicing of online costs is something that has been abused very badly by most of the big e-tailers around us. Giving everything free to attract more customers online is not going to solve the problem, because it is not sustainable. So nowadays we are seeing that there are many big campaigns going on against big online shopping platforms, because they are robbing of the profitability of many of the manufacturers. Similarly, I think there will be a change in the mindset of people as well, and there will be a more sustainable environment for selling products online. So till that happens, you should not stay away from it. You just need to be conscious that while servicing online, you should not be losing money.
Yeah, that's true. That's very important, that we should also use this online, let's say, miracle of this. But that's naturally comes to the very important question every industry goes through is, what do you think where the food industry is heading in next 5-10 years, especially Indian food and snacks industry?
I think we will see a big change in the way snacking changes in the country. Lot of Western influence and the progressing GDP that our country is expected to follow will bring in a lot more expendable capital available in the people of the country. The younger people will be furthermore inclined to spend on convenience foods on one side, and then experience food on the other side. So these are the two spectrums, where one, it is about creating value at a very ease of doing activity, and the second one is about curated experiences which make people feel special about it, because this income that they want to dispose of, we need to ensure that their spend happens on us as a brand. So how can we appeal to them in multiple avenues is something that we as brands need to keep thinking all the time and creating products there.
Indrajit, you are basically, so to say, food processing industry. The generation next of people are not want to go in agriculture. India as such, as an agriculture country or agriculture producing country, is losing a key young population going in. So you think that's going to affect the food processing business, or let's say food manufacturing business as such, or what we should do to attract this young population to the agriculture?
I think 14% of our country's GDP is coming in from agriculture. So that has gone down, say, in the last 5 years from 17% to 14%. And I fear it will go down to 11%, if not less, into single digits. And it is a worrying factor, because there is a big chunk of population who are dependent solely on their agrarian income. So how do we ensure as a system where we make policy that enhances people to be present in agriculture, do something revolutionary about it? And, as how we have been trying to do with our automotive industry or software industry, where we are the auto hub of the world or the software hub of the world, how can we become the farm of the world is something that we need to think on a country level, because that is a big value chain that we are letting go of, and it will definitely hamper the food processing units in the country, because we will have to keep sourcing raw material from abroad, which is not going to help us. Secondly, even on the country and the economic level, the foreign exchange reserves are something that we deplete when we import. So we need to try and see how that can also be localized, and we reduce further dependency on imports. Because very often we keep seeing that the next world war is more likely going to happen because of water and food rather than territory. So how can we be self-sufficient on that is something that the policymakers and also the youth of the country need to be thinking about.
That's very true. Indranil, you are a fourth generation entrepreneur, or let's say fourth generation partner in a Chitre group. All the businesses, people say they don't last to third or fourth generation. I think hardly 2% of the businesses last to fourth generation. So there must have been a very standardized succession planning or succession policy your group must be having. So can you please share that will help to other groups to do their succession planning very well?
So I would not say we have a very standardized policy, but I would say that we have a very hands-on policy. So what my generation before me has been able to do very well in my generation, or the generation before that also in terms of my father's generation, was that they put each other, all the family members who wanted to join the business, in complementary or supplementary roles to each other. So nobody really had a specific dependency on the other person in terms of achieving that domain related tasks. But if one chain link of it was like a chain link. So if one link failed, the entire system would go down. But if all the links came together as a link, then the chain becomes stronger and you build a better platform. And that is something that the family was able to achieve well, where they put all of us into domains which were not conflicting with each other, but were complementary to each other. And that is how, the chain was able to help actually grow the organization further. I think going down, we further need to also emphasize that probably not all family members will become partners or active partners in the business in the generations later to us. So how do we bring in an more professional management? How do we make sure that the business is run more professionally? And how do we put in a more proactive ecosystem for accommodating outsiders to take key executive positions is something that we as a family are thinking upon, and something that all family business need to keep thinking upon. Because unlike in my father's generation, where they were able to sacrifice their dreams, not that they, in our case, but they would sacrifice their dreams for their father's wishes or the generation's wishes or the business wishes. The next generation is not going to be like that. They will be very independent, and we need to accommodate that into our businesses, or otherwise that person dependency will lead to the failure of the business.
Indranil, that's bring to me your personal side, or let's say your vibrant personality side of yours. We all know that you are a very outbound person. So how you keep yourself updated? Means everybody likes to know that how Indranil as such likes to keep himself updated, be it a personal front or a professional front.
So I think it does not really matter, right? Like how professional or personal it is. It is that evolutionary pattern that you have to put yourself into, where you are trying to learn and grasp new things happening around you. Because many times you learn something on a personal basis, but something that you can apply on a business basis, and some things that you learn as business strategy that work very well on your personal side as well. So what I try to do is just keep my eyes and ears open, learn, talk more, get more answers, ask more questions, and see what's happening around the world. And whatever is my worth, I try to imbibe into myself. That is just about it.
So what's your daily motivation, if I ask so?
Well, there are two, I would say. One is, of course, this legacy that we are carrying. Not everybody is privileged enough to get this kind of legacy of 8 years. So we need to acknowledge that, respect that, and try to build upon that, so that we create a even bigger legacy and something that the next generations can also look upon. And secondly, I would say is your personal goal that you wish to achieve something and create an impact in this world. So that itself is a motivation factor for me.
Personal outtake, personal take on the corona outbreak we have.
Well, I think last year it was something that we did not anticipate. So yes, of course, the lockdown was necessary and something that should have helped us cope with this second wave of corona well. Unfortunately, the kind of bureaucracy and the leadership that we have around us, and also us as common citizens who are putting these people into power, we are not asking them tough questions, and they are taking us for a ride. So we as citizens need to be probably a little more sensitive, follow the rules, and also ask more tough questions so that we are the economy and the common man is not taken for a ride at the whims of the politicians. It's something that needs to be sunken well into our system now.
Very, very rightly put, valid point. Also, means we know that corona gave everybody quite a good personal and family time. Every entrepreneur always cries that it is a 24/7, 365 days a job. You as a person who has a vibrant personality, also legacy of such a big group and automation, which is a quite a handy work you have to do. How do you keep balance between your personal, professional and the family life?
Well, I think it is a constant process, right? It's a balancing act that you have to do. And there is no defined formula, but communication, I believe, is the key. Be it at a personal level or a professional level or a family level. If there is a decent enough transparency on what to expect, what is happening, what is being done, what are the problems that are being faced, I think that helps solve a lot many concerns on balancing this out. And of course, you as a person need to take an effort to balance this out. So you cannot say that everything will work on its own and you are just going to be part of it whenever time allows. So it's a on-demand job, just like entrepreneurship, and you have to live through it.
We as a VMA or all other 10 Central India's association has a lot of budding entrepreneurs. They quite of them look towards you to be a next Indranil Chitale or be a big icon. What will be your message to those all budding entrepreneurs who wants to foray into entrepreneurship?
I think there are a couple of points that I would definitely like to share with these new budding entrepreneurs. One is that don't run behind public perceived value. Your company's value lies in your bottom lines and your top lines and your profitability. So that is something that you need to preserve, because not every company becomes a unicorn. So don't be faced or pressurized by what is happening in the market. You need not be a unicorn, yet you can be successful. So how do you strike that balance, and where exactly do you want to go is a goal that you have to set. And while doing that, as if you're running a business, profit is a mandatory necessity that business has to generate. Need not be extreme amounts of profit, filthy amounts of profit, but if you are not generating profits and not building a healthy balance sheet, then that business is not right, and eventually it is not going to sustain. So what do you want to achieve out of your business is a question that entrepreneurs need to address. If they want to go for the valuation game and hype the valuation and just take an exit, of course, we know what to do. But if you want to create some things that last, some things that sustain for a long time, and in our case, like how it has lasted for 80 years, it is because we preserve the core aspect of the business well. Secondly, I would say is that whatever you're trying to do as a business, or be it a product, be it a service, is it actually enhancing the value to the customer? So is it making an improvement to the customer's life? Is it adding happiness maybe in our case, or is it adding any nutrition in some other case, or is it making something easy, or is it making something faster or something more automated? Whatever improves value is going to last, and that is going to sustain. So how can you keep creating value for your customers is something that businesses need to keep thinking all the time. And thirdly, I would say is that don't be shy of taking debt. Use the financial systems and the leverages that are around us. The old saying that especially in Maharashtra we see that we are very much often shy on taking debt. आपल्या डोक्यावर कर्ज नको. I think the banking system has changed. Now the way the financial systems and the metrics are there, we can leverage that and grow our business at a much faster pace. So do not be debt averse. Take debt, but be conscious about taking debt. And fourthly, use the online platforms to build brands. We built brand over 80 years. Now brands can be built overnight. So do not miss the online marketing bandwagon that we see out.
Very rightly said. We know Indranil as a Chitaya Group partner, but we also know Indranil as a venture capitalist. Have you ever thought of acquiring a brand?
Oh, I do keep thinking, I do keep evaluating. So, in fact, right now I'm in the middle of one. So, let's see what happens.
But that also brings to a very important question with a lot of budding entrepreneurs, or like you said, unicorn company, dream of entrepreneurs. They always look at the venture capitalist in a say that whether the idea should be completely brand new, or it's like idea can be a vague idea and then the still venture capitalists believe in the entrepreneurs. So what's your take on it?
So I would say we had a great learning even in my own VC experience in the last 1 year. Two of our companies, one is HR Niti and the other is Women's Cricket Zone. Both of them started off with a business model which we thought was very, very relevant to that time. Post pandemic, their business models have changed and they have actually grown much better. So I would say that when you're getting into that VC zone, see what the entrepreneur is also doing. See how long the entrepreneur wants to stay in that business and whether that entrepreneur is agile and adaptable as well. Because as we've seen, pandemic can change many businesses overnight. If we are not able to adapt and change our business models very fast, we can probably be wiped out as well. So if the system is something that is agile enough to accommodate this, then the business model gets firm over a period of time. What worked today might not work tomorrow, but the philosophy and what the company stands to do and the entrepreneur spirit is something that we need to understand well.
You rightly said. That brings to the last questions, comment before the audience comes in is, we all know CSR activity Chitaya does from last so many years. One of them, we all like to congratulate Chitaya Group for one very important thing. You always send mithais packets to Maratha Contingent Army Group on Diwali. So that is a very proud moment. And can you little bit share on how the idea came in and where the CSR activities of Chitaya Group is heading?
So I think the CSR activities are happening on multiple fronts, be it education, be it women's education, be it building schools, be it also nutrition for many of the Anganwadis that are around our factories. Because what we see is that malnutrition is a big problem in our country. It can be about ambulances and improving healthcare, where the family has been engaged in improving the healthcare infrastructure in rural India as well as in cities like Pune. Apart from that, very often last 5 years, the area where we originate from has been plagued with natural disasters. 2 years we've been affected with floods. The next 2 years it has been because of COVID. So that way, as part of a community that has helped us build what we are today, it is natural for us to help support them in times of difficulties. And that is something that the family keeps doing. The senior members of the family are more actively engaged into this activity more than I would be. And we keep doing that all the time. With regards to the Jawans in the Maratha Light Infantry, this is something that we do as a joint venture, or rather we support Sneha Seva, which is a NGO that is based out of Pune and who works proactively in providing this to the Jawans. So we do some activity on a personal basis. We also take a lot of Sneha Seva takes a lot of donations and also sends 4 boxes on their behalf to the Jawans. We need to understand that, especially in the frozen sections of the country, say Siachen and Kargil and all of those areas, post Dashtera, going up to month of April, say close to Gudi Padwa, all these soldiers are defending our country in frozen climates and have no access to mainland. So whatever supplies they stock up in the month of October or November, they have to survive on them till end of March. And in that, if there is some comfort food from their home, that can probably help their morale further in defending our country. So we try to do our most for it. I think that has been public since the last year. We have been doing it for the last 28 years. So, and we'll continue doing that in the time to come.
It's very commendable and we are really proud. Indranil, that brings my section. I can continue for a long time talking with you, but I think there is a lot of audience who wants to ask the questions.
Sure.
So now I open the forum for for audience to ask the question.
Anytime, no problem.
I request audience to one by one raise their hands, so we can just make them unmute and ask the question to Indranil.
Hello.
Alok Dhotekar has first question.
Yes. Nice to hear all that you talked of, Indranil. I will actually correct Dr. Prashant when he said that your company is an 80 years old company. I call it rather 80 years young company. It was Pune was your forte for all these many years, and you made a foray into Nagpur recently. So, what has been your experience with Nagpur, and what is your message to Nagpur entrepreneurs?
Well, Nagpur is a market that I genuinely love. We as a family also love, and something that we hold very close to our heart for the simple reason that the first Chittai Express, which was with this whole idea of packaging, opened in Nagpur. And the people of Nagpur have ensured that it has not just been sustainable, but it is growing every year. So we genuinely, truly thank the people of Nagpur for showing all of this love and appreciating what we do. What we have also learned from the people of Nagpur is that they are foodies or khawaiye, as we see, and they, there is always a demand for some new innovation, something new and something different to try at Nagpur when we do our review meetings. So that is something that is helping us innovate, rather be on our toes and do something new all the time. So that's why Nagpur is something that is close to us, and we will try and keep enhancing that further in the time to come.
Sir, any message for the entrepreneurs of Nagpur?
I think thanks to the IT boom that I have seen in Nagpur, and also the new industrial corridors that are coming, and the Samruddhi Expressway that is eventually going to improve connectivity from Nagpur to the ports of our country, I think there has never been a better time to use this mandate and platform that the government is providing to further reach out to the world. Our very own rival Haldiram is based out of Nagpur, and they are also a billion-dollar company that are servicing the world with their products. So if these things can happen from Nagpur, I'm sure more entrepreneurs can come from there, and I'm fairly confident that that can add to the GDP of this country.
Sir, बोल सकते हैं आप? The next question is from Vishal Agarwal.
Indranil, can I ask you a question? This is Rohit Chandak from Nagpur.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, one thing which Dr. Prashant introduced that you are trying to achieve a Harvard MBA. Okay, Harvard MBA for
Yes.
Indian business. What is your objective to do the Harvard MBA, and what leap you plan to take after this global exposure?
Well, so I'm doing an executive MBA at Harvard. It is called the Owners President's Management course. So it is something that is targeted towards owners of different companies. And what has been the principle at Harvard, as well as something that I also see resonate with me, is that the MBA, the classroom probably teaches you just 30%. The remaining 70% is something that you learn from your peers. So we have, I have people around me who have been in business for much longer. So I'm one of the youngest in that class there. But along with that, there are people who have struggled. They have been refugees. They have moved to other countries. There are somebody who have been coming in from very royal lineage to young entrepreneurs to old established entrepreneurs who are running billion-dollar companies which are public. So just the learning from these peers is so great, and the experiences that you get while being on campus and knowing about what they did, how they reacted to situations, how they handled certain tricky times in their lives, and overall, how do you become appealing as a global business entity is something that I have been able to understand well from there, and that is what I want to try and build upon, because we want to not just be a company selling Indian products globally, but we want to now become a global food company by the end of this decade. And that is where this experience is something I hope to help improve how we appeal as a company.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Welcome.
Indranil, this is CA Ritesh Mehta from Nagpur.
Hi, Ritesh.
Good morning. It was quite inspiring listening to you,
Good morning.
but you didn't spoke much about finance, and I think finance is the key to any business. So my question is how you manage your working capital in your business, because working capital management is key in food and packaging snacking industry. So what's the USP you are following?
Well, so when it comes to finance, as you said, working capital is the most important part. And when I was talking about what the new entrepreneurs should be looking, they should be looking at their bottom lines and cash flows. As you rightly said, that is a key factor we try to focus on. Fortunately, we have been able to build multiple revenue streams that help us improve our cash flows very well, and that basically imparts our working capital. So because of our milk business, we have a daily income source that is coming in as an essential commodity. Secondly, our store businesses help us generate a good amount of revenue as well, where that is something that goes directly into our pockets. And thirdly, our distribution channel also helps us get the volumes right. But there is a certain amount of credit period that is factored into it, but then that is what we try and balance out and keep to the minimum. And fourthly, I would say where we are also able to make a decent amount of impact is because of our export business, where we are able to utilize the foreign exchange hedging much better. And that also impacts how we can efficiently utilize our capex. So that way, I think I had read somewhere that you need to have 7 sources of income to be actually sustainable from a financial perspective and a cash flow perspective. So how wide can your revenue sources be, and how multiple channels can contribute to your cash flows and ease your working capital requirement is something that you should try and focus on while building a business. Secondly, I would say we also need to respect that our companies are ones making money, and very often we see that the company remains in debt, the company remains cash flow negative, and the partners are exploiting the company and taking the money out or keeping the working capital out. So there needs to be some financial discipline put into the system to ensure that the money that the company generates remains with the company, and we as partners treat that money professionally and not misuse it or abuse it, and so that the healthy state remains with the company and not with the partners. So this financial discipline is something that every entrepreneur needs to try and establish, and I would love to take this offline with you and show you what we are doing in terms of maintaining all of this.
Thank you, Indranil. It was well said. When you are planning to be a zero debt company, then very soon.
Apart from project finance, we have mostly been zero debt. Only when the big capex are happening and we need to take subsidies, we try to leverage debt. And when I say that we need to utilize debt much better, I speak from my own experience that even as a family, we are debt averse or shy of taking debt unless necessary. So I would rather say we need to be loaded to a certain extent with a little amount of debt.
Thank you, Indranil. I appreciate.
Indranil sir, good morning.
Welcome.
This is Pradeep Sani
Good
from
morning.
Nagpur.
Good morning.
So,
Good morning.
As we know, it's a big business house. Many stories have been associated. Legacy has been going on and on, but the ride is not always smooth. I would like to know one of your biggest setbacks and how did you tackle that? And what was the importance of hiring management consultants at that time, getting the most out of it? I mean, every business house has a setback. The story is not always smooth. The ride is not always smooth. What was your biggest setback and how did you tackle that? How did you come over it?
So I would say we are to a certain extent lucky because we have such a wide range of partners inside the business that we will probably be a little slow in taking certain decisions, but we will make lesser mistakes while doing that. So as a company, we have been not fiercely aggressive. So that's why we have made lesser mistakes as well. But while doing that, we've also had our fair shares of setbacks, also our fair shares of problems, issues that we've had to deal with. And particularly being in Maharashtra, labor is one of the biggest concerns that we've had to deal with, which is what has forced us probably to innovate and automate our processes so much. So I think with every adversity that we have faced, we have probably come out with an idea of what we should not do rather than what we should keep doing. And if that learning is something that you as a business are able to understand and work upon, these setbacks become just a bump in the long journey that the business continues to have. There are certain times mistakes that also happen, especially when leveraging technology. So while whether we should be doing Tetra Pak, or whether we should be doing UHT, or whether we should be doing just pouch packaging milk, or whether we should be doing yogurts or flavored yogurts or not, or whether we should be doing gluten-free snacks or not. These are debates that we keep seeing, and sometimes certain brands grow to a certain level, and then we realize that probably we could have been more earlier than what we anticipated, and then we spend more time in acquiring customer base or breaking that that established brands market share. So it can be a little expensive as well. So how do you have a board which is that mix of advisors, other business leaders, other domain experts, and also your key business people deliberating on this all the time, which ensures that you make lesser mistakes or have lesser setbacks. So this is where the management consultants also play an important role, because sometimes, especially as a family business, certain issues also become emotional. While the logic says yes, the emotions might say no. And how do you break this deadlock? Because there is no logic that can break it. And that is where these external consultants are able to probably help create a level playing field, balance every person's concerns and aspirations, and actually find a way out as an organization. So we try to make sure that we engage consultants in most of the activities we try to do, have our own sounding board around us where whenever we are trying to execute something new. And especially on the bigger projects where there is a big capex that goes into, say, 50 crores, 100 crores or something above that, we try to ensure that it is weighted on multiple chances and multiple aspects before we try and jump that bandwagon.
Thank you, sir. That answers it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Indrajit. Hi, this is Vishal
Hi.
Agarwal from IMA. Well, I want to know and get knowledge about how did your work, which is there, which is majorly where there is raw material required, there is logistic work required, a lot of manpower needs to be managed, right? So during this COVID time, when there were curfews and where there were travel were stopped, people were not allowed to stay in groups, and that's a present time. I'm talking about in the future, if this continues, when there is limitations to this. So how do you plan, or how do you work on it? What's the future plan for this?
So I would say we that way are slightly lucky, because we fall under the essential services because of the milk products business. So that way we were allowed to operate from day one. So most of our factories never shut down at all. Secondly, we most of our factories are there in the rural area. So either way, either the people are employed at a local level where the restrictions have been relatively less compared to a big city and a municipal corporation. Secondly, we have many of our people working, staying on campus. So we have accommodation places made for them. So that in situ staying, that was mandatory last year till the month of June, was something that we already had in place. So we could utilize that. What we also saw was that because of our packaging products and placements, we actually had a surge in demand for our products, and we actually had to bring more people in to work with us. And some of these skilled people come either from Rajasthan or other parts of Maharashtra. And before they could be bought into the company housing, we even rented 2 wedding halls which were lying blank at that time to make them as quarantine centers, put them in for 15 days at company expense, then got them tested, and then finally got them entry into the factory. And this was happening last year in the month of April, just after the lockdown. So the rules were also a lot more stricter than what were there right now. But I think eventually going down the line, we all need to keep considering this fact that probably having integrated townships around your industrial corridors is going to be necessary, so that this can be streamlined much better. If we are going to depend on public activities, probably that is going to be a dampening factor. Unfortunately, there is a cost to it, and this cost your customer is not going to pay. So as a company, how are you going to accommodate this cost into your costing, your balance sheet, and try and leverage this again, is something that keeps or needs a lot more deliberation than what it needs has been done right now. And I would love to talk more about this, as to know what you have been thinking on this as well.
What about the export? The export orders?
Yeah. So to be very honest, we've seen almost 3 times surge in exports in the last year.
Okay.
And that has been very useful because that has ensured that even though the lockdowns in India have been there, our factories have been occupied to keep producing what they are doing. So we never really fell down on capacity, engagement, or occupation. And that way, that has relatively helped us balance our cost, or rather, sometimes with exports, we were actually able to make better money per product per kg as well. So exports is a channel that has played a prominent role in us sustaining better last year.
Great. Congratulations. Thanks for the inputs. Yeah, and best wishes.
Thank you.
Can I ask the question now?
Yes, sir. Bilkul.
Yeah, Indranil ji, I am Vaibhav Agrawal from Nagpur, and
Hello, everybody.
yeah, I am into flexible packaging business, and I heard from you in this interview also that I think maybe more than 10 times you have talked about packaging, and the government is behind banning the plastic, and they are looking plastic as a evil, and
Culprit.
in this a culprit, and this corona time we see there is a huge surge of one-time use plastic, and packaging looking to hygiene aspects has become very important now. So how you see this packaging going, in what direction, looking to government norms and looking to Modi ji commitment of banning plastic? So how you see packaging with plastic?
I think first of all, I have been involved in a couple of these industry exchange platforms for plastics, and I do not completely agree with what the government plans to do. While it is a great showcase measure or brownie point measure, banning plastics or completely getting rid of plastics is something that I find impossible at this moment, at least. While that is the case, I do accept the fact that there is a big abuse or lack of sensitivity in the customers who use these single-use plastics and throw them onto the streets, which is probably hampering you and me both as industries, because you as producers and we as packagers. So we need to sensitize the customers a lot more. Along with that, create an infrastructure for reverse integration of collection of all of these plastics. Thirdly, what I also see is that the government has relatively progressed in their understanding of what plastics are doing and how they are necessary. And if the right mix of plastics is used, where probably instead of laminates we can use co-extruded plastics, we can use the right mix, like say polypropylene or BOPP, high intensity HIPS or PP based packaging. There is a much better chance at recyclability compared to something like PVC. So a ban on certain materials, but promotion on getting certain materials to be manufactured in our country can actually help solve this situation much better. So just taxing the manufacturers and just taxing the converters and the producers of plastic is not going to solve the problem. The government also needs to put in more effort to sensitize the people around, create better collecting mechanisms for all the plastics that is being put onto the streets. And if the government is willing to take a serious proactive measure, I am sure we as industry are not running away, because ultimately we are here to stay for a much longer time. So we will definitely be sensitive towards it.
So what do you think? Is it safe to expand in this flexible packaging business? Because always when we plan to do bigger future investments, we get the question that is it safe to invest in this business?
If you are able to put co-extruded lines or do co-extrusion based products, I am sure there is a big market for it. You have probably realized that already the PP demand in our country has surged so high. So invest into the right technology. I am sure there is a big market to us. But if you are only going to get into laminates and do materials which are probably on the verge of getting banned, there is a limitation to that. So invest in what would be the future requirement. I'm sure that would work.
Thank you.
Still continuously is a challenge.
Sir, I have a question. Myself, Prasanna Dani. Actually, मुझे ये पूछना था
Hello.
हेलो आपने आप चौथे जनरेशन से बिलोंग करते हैं बोर्ड रूम में काफी सारे डिस्कशंस होते होंगे जिसमें आप अग्री नहीं करते और द एल्डर मेंबर्स probably in the board are unanimous on it. So how do you tackle that situation? Many times that happens because of the generation gap.
Yeah, I think it's a constant struggle. So if you see how the condition with Rishabh Pant in the Indian batting lineup is, that is how next generation with senior players is. So you have established players like Dhoni around, but still, if Rishabh Pant wants to make a place, he has to wait for a certain time. So I think time is the solution, but along with that, communication is very essential. If things are put out into the open and there is a conscious discussion that happens, and the aim and objective are clear, very often it does not become an ego issue, but it becomes more of a governing company issue. And that professionalism is something that we all need to bring onto the table. Similarly, what I have seen is that very often just boardroom discussions do not always work. You probably need to build a one-on-one rapport with all the board members and also communicate certain ideas before board meetings with them, see their opinions, address their concerns, and find a way out of it. So when actually the big board meetings happen and when there is just a binary output that is expected, yes or no, you are very likely to get that in your favor. So communication and just constant channelizing of your efforts to sell your ideas, talk your ideas, address their concerns, hear them out. And as we say in Hindi, samvad is a very mandatory aspect for anybody sitting on the board. And if that is there, very likely the decisions happen in your favor and you're able to make a breakthrough.
Thank you, sir.
That brings to last question, which we got in a chat box. Indranil, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So it's a question came from Indore Management Association, one of our partnering in this association from Indore. Akhilesh ji has sent the question in chat box. Maintaining spirit and zeal continuously is a challenge. The moment it drops, entire organization goes for a toss. What is your mantra to achieve continuous spirit, aggression, and the zeal?
So, sorry, can you please come again? What is your mantra after that?
To achieve continuous spirit, aggression, and zeal.
Well, that's true, and I fully agree with it. But then that is where I would say the entrepreneurs or the board members or the partners play a very important role. So you need to have a team around you which is hungry enough to grow and keeps looking into the future. And for that, sometimes probably there can be a set of complacency that comes into the system. And to drive that, you probably need to use all factors. So if it does not work internally, you need to rely on certain external factors. So external factors can be your competitor, it can be consultants, it can be just understanding sessions or awareness sessions, and also putting in a lot of effort to keep evaluating what next. So if that thought process is imbibed into the culture of the company, very likely these questions are addressed on their own, because you are able to create that innovation or future-ready viewpoint into your senior management. If the senior management is on board, then very likely that percolates well into the bottom line and everybody in the organization aligns to it. Along with that, I also feel that what has worked for us is setting 5-year visions. What do we want to achieve? Where are we today and where do we want to go tomorrow? Or 5 years down the line. When these visions are set and they are vetted and agreed upon by the board, then everybody is aligned into one direction, and then you can keep that spirit alive much better. So set vision plans and put in the effort to create visions which are slightly long term, and that is when you are able to achieve change.
Thank you, Indranil. Thank you for giving such a long time for all of us on a Sunday morning. I'm glad to say that there are more than 650 online audience were listening the story of Chitare and how they are going ahead. But this event wouldn't have been possible with the support of all other 10 association. I would like to thank personally Indore Management Association, Ashwin Paslikarji, Amravati Management Association, Chandrapur Management Association, our own Vidarbha Industries Association, Butibori Manufacturing Association, the Institute of Indian Foundry, Vidar Plastic Industries Association, SAMPAR, Electronic Association, Automobile Association, and many more. We also like to thank Shadows by Triaca Venture for providing the space as a studio, VMA studio in this Corona time. And we have a big thank you, Indranil. We know this was supposed to be live from Pune. We are traveling to Pune and taking your interview, but due to Corona, we couldn't able to do it. But thank you very much for taking out time and giving us such a valuable insight. We are looking forward
It's my
for such a
pleasure.
valuable association in future also. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
मैं म्यूट हो गया ना?